Hello everyone, Alan Sens here, and welcome to this video on nuclear arms control today. So this is the first in a series of videos where we're going to be looking at some of the contemporary issues facing arms control and look at some of the future challenges that are on the horizon. And I really wanted to focus on that because these are the sorts of issues that all of you are going to be confronting. So in this first video, we're going to look at the NPT and the CTBT in particular. So we'll be focusing on non-proliferation. So let's get started. Okay, so our learning objective for this particular video, by the time we're done, you should be familiar with the current issues facing the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. So remember our motive here, right? When we look at the non-proliferation agenda, the whole idea, the whole intent is to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons to more states and, of course, to non-state actors. And the immediate challenges in this regard are twofold. First of all, we want to avoid what's called breakout by existing non-nuclear weapon states who are members of the NPT. So one of the current challenges then is preventing current NPT members from acquiring nuclear weapons and breaking out of the treaty, as it were. The current focus for the last several years, of course, has been Iran, and we'll be following up with Iran later in the course. The second category of concerns is the effort, the need, to prevent proliferation by nuclear-armed states outside the NPT. And the big focus here has been on North Korea for other obvious reasons, but also on Pakistan. And Pakistan you don't hear as much about in the news, but there are concerns that nuclear technology from Pakistan has been disseminated out into the international system. And that, of course, is a proliferation concern. More long-term, the question and the primary agenda is really how to strengthen the NPT and other non-proliferation mechanisms that aren't part of the NPT, so the non-proliferation treaty mechanisms. So first of all, there's a need to enhance safeguards in all the ways and shapes and forms that they take place. So enhance inspections, enhance verification, enhancing confidence in the entire system. And then secondly, improving and enhancing compliance and enforcement capacity, especially through the International Atomic Energy Agency. So strengthening the inspections regime and strengthening the abilities of on-site inspectors to do their work. All of this is part of the long-term agenda of maintaining and strengthening the non-proliferation treaty regime. When it comes to strengthening non-NPT mechanisms, there's sort of two primary aspects to this. The first is to improve export controls on nuclear materials. And a number of export control agreements exist in the world. These are agreements where groups of countries have gotten together and agreed they won't transfer nuclear technologies of various kinds to other countries. But their coverage isn't universal. In fact, it's nowhere close to universal, so that's a problem. Also, there's an effort to expand nuclear weapons free zones. And these free zones, the whole idea is you create regions of the world where nuclear weapons cannot be possessed, they cannot be stored, and you can't transfer or transit nuclear weapons through those zones. And there's a number of them. And the whole idea that if we expand the number of these zones, and if nuclear weapon states comply with them, we'll have a growing, literally, surface of the planet where nuclear weapons will not reside. So the long-term hope here with these mechanisms is we can improve export controls and we can expand nuclear weapons free zones. Now, when we look forward, there are some concerns about the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the International Atomic Energy Agency that are worthy of mention. There is a history of non-compliance by NPT members. So these are the most commonly cited cases. You have Iraq in 91, Romania in 92, North Korea in 93, Libya in 2004, Iran in 2005, and Syria in 2011. All of these countries were found to be in violation of the NPT whilst being a member. So obviously, the concern has to be that there's a need for ongoing vigilance amongst NPT countries themselves. Another problem is cheating. North Korea signed the NPT in 1985, but of course was trying to acquire nuclear weapons and then actually did acquire nuclear weapons and then promptly withdrew in 2003, and of course has since tested. And so that's a problem with respect to the NPT, that you have an existing NPT state that cheats, achieves a nuclear weapons capability, withdraws from the treaty, and tests nuclear weapons. Obviously, that's not something you want to have happen very often, if at all. The final concern going forward is disputes in and among the NPT countries themselves. So there's been a major diplomatic dispute within the NPT membership for a while now, and the dispute is over the so-called targeted countries. And the question here is, should the NPT focus on all its member states equally? That is to say, should it treat them all equally as proliferation concerns? So a country like Canada will get the same amount of inspections with the same amount of energy and intrusiveness as any other country. Or do you target countries? Should the NPT use its scarce resources to specifically target countries that are believed to be somewhat higher or higher risks of proliferation? And so those countries would receive more inspections more frequently, more enhanced inspections, and so on. And so some countries say it should be the former, everyone should be treated equally, and other countries are saying, no, we should focus on certain countries because they're more of a risk. But then other countries say, well, that's being really political and it's unequal and it shouldn't be that way. So that diplomatic tension is very real and doesn't show any signs of being resolved soon. When it comes to the CTBT, and this is sort of the second piece of this video, I'm not going to say too much because obviously you're immersed with the NPT, you're going to be doing your projects on the NPT, but I would just want to highlight a couple of points. Obviously, the number one priority for the CTBT going forward is to secure ratification and entry into force of the treaty. Of the 44 Annex II states whose signature and ratification are required for the treaty to enter into force, 3 have not signed. So that's the DPRK, North Korea, India, and Pakistan, and 5 have not ratified: China, Egypt, Iran, Israel, and the United States. So that's what needs to happen for the treaty to enter into force. Now, the good news is all 5 official nuclear weapon states under the NPT maintain a voluntary moratorium on nuclear tests, but the bad news is at least 3, Russia, UK, and the United States, conduct what are called subcritical tests. And, this is controversial because the whole idea of a subcritical test is you're testing in a way that you don't actually achieve a fission chain reaction. So a subcritical test is conducted on a small amount of nuclear material under high pressure using conventional explosives, but you don't generate a sustained nuclear chain reaction, so you don't get an explosion. So is that a nuclear test or is it not a nuclear test? And because generally we define them as detonations, explosions, these subcritical tests are considered by these countries to be not bound by the treaty. So, whereas others say that it violates the spirit of the treaty. So this is a concern. So just so we can map this out graphically, here's your countries that have not signed: Pakistan, India, North Korea, and then here are the countries in yellow that have not ratified. And so those are the countries that we need to have sign and ratify in order for the CTBT to enter into effect. Okay, so by now you should be familiar with the current and some of the future issues facing the NPT and the IAEA and the CTBT. Okay, so obviously that's a fairly brief overview, but it's those are the essentials. That's part of the challenge going forward. So when we speak about non-proliferation, these are the big pieces. The question is do you see a way of moving forward on any of these issues? We will follow up with some of these later in the course, but for now, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon.